inherited some code one time that, I kid you not, was var a var b var, oh, this is the best part, var password equals admin.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Hey David, it's good to see you in the chat.
So nothing had a name except for username and password. I was like, what does this
I think it's
do?
fascinating. Like you and people like my husband, they've got these like really strict rules that they follow their life by, and I don't. And I think if I made myself have those, I would forget them the next day. So
I'm going to refer you to a good friend of mine named Steve Smith.
Okay.
And you're now subscribing to his stream, and you must watch and read everything he does.
This is a Twitch person.
This is a real life person that has a Twitch channel.
Pulling it up.
So Steve Smith is amazing code.
I wrong. STEVE.
Look for here. I'll find it for you. It's AR.
Surely that's not who you're talking about.
No. Here we go. He goes by an alias of Ardalis. Yeah, we'll throw this into chat here. Found
him. But I found him with the Ardalis.
Yes. This is somebody that is great to follow and has some amazing materials on Pluralsight, and many katas up on GitHub. So definitely somebody to look up to for stuff like this. But naming things is really hard, and we want to have intent behind the things that we name. So I like to use is or has with Boolean values. So we know that we're kind of dictating that's what's going to happen here. It's going to be in one state or another. So has the game started? I mean, that's literally how, game state has started. We know what that's implying, right?
Right. No, so, and I love it, would use it if I was working with you. But if I'm like off doing my own thing, I got my music going, like there's no rules that come to Alyssa's mind. Like even you were talking about, we could really bother a CSS person by moving the width down. And I'm like, do it, brother, move that width down.
Really?
Like,
It drives me crazy.
Really don't have rules like that. So I can adapt people's rules as my own. But if it's like a personal project, I'm jamming, it's primarily chaos.
You're not watching me type.
Oh, what'd you type? Bool, seriously.
Game state, seriously. Like, do we know what this does? So, game state, game started.
I do comment like a mofo, though, and you don't seem to. And I think maybe it's because you have patterns in place that are like, yeah, this logically makes sense. Whereas I'm like, comment, this line of code is doing this. Comment, this CSS is doing this. Like, all over the place. So...
Yeah, so I mean, you could name it something like game started, but still that doesn't really tell you what game started is doing. Is it going to return something? Is it a function I'm calling?
Are you only using is and has then on Booleans, or will you use is and has elsewhere?
I generally only use them on Boolean values.
Okay. Cool.
Sometimes that terminology will change slightly if it is maybe like a list of things that I'm expecting to return back true or false as well. So it's a thing.
Comment. It's cracking me up.
Oh, the way I like to think of it is I write code assuming that the next person who reads my code is a psychopath who would hunt me down and cause harm to my being if the code frustrates them all. It's an excellent way to put it. Right. So has started. So has the game started? It takes practice to do this, by the way. I'm not just like, I was born and I decided that I'm always going to write code this way.
The rules of life were handed to me and I followed them.
It takes practice and discipline. And like after years of writing code that I myself have gone back to and gone, why did I do this? I have no idea what my code does. And then following people like Steve Smith and others that show you how to do things the right way.
So question when you're like going through game state and you're like, we need to riff a bit here. I feel like these ideas of what the game state needs just comes to you from above. And I just along for the ride. And I don't really see how you're mapping things out as like what we need. And I don't know. Why
some of it's probably just experience from building stuff before, and then I did write down in GitHub like some rough sketch ideas of what our bullet points for today are. I know this isn't like an exact like one-to-one map here, but where did that go? Looking off of my other screen here. There we go. On Thursday's stream, you know, can the player start a game?
Right.
And when I say can the player start a game, there has to be something in the code that identifies that the players are starting the game. I know there's going to be some point where I need to check and see if the game is started. And can we deal the cards and are they dealt? So I know I'm going to need a deck of cards here soon.
So when we're talking about this next bullet point of to do, and we're looking at our game state that we're setting up, does it need to know about the cards being dealt? Like what? Like is there like one place in the app that knows everybody's hands? Like what is?
Yes, so we're gonna have to have that, because if we don't have a place to know everybody's hands, then if a player gets disconnected at some point, then that information is lost. That hand is lost. If the client is solely responsible, like if we said, okay, the game state has the deck and then it deals a card out to a client and never tracks where that card went, then if the client loses its information, that state's lost.
That was kind of how forever. I was imagining it. I was imagining like the game would know about the deck as far as like what is left in the deck, and then the clients would be responsible for their own hands. But I do see a problem.
We never trust the client. Like if this was a poker app and we were letting the clients track their, you know, unvalidated solely track the state in the client's hand. If somebody were able to get the source code and compile their own client somehow that always has aces, that would suck for us. Then we're gonna have to rewrite a lot of code to go back and fix what we oopsie doopsied from the beginning.
So we need not only a has game started, but we need like a remainder deck or our deck.
We need a deck,
and
then when we deal a hand, we're gonna have to keep track of that hand.
So game state knows about players. So can we just do like player.hand? Like
yes. So
inside of it.
See, now you're starting to do what I'm doing. So right now we have a list of players, which is a string, but what you're saying is you're envisioning that a player has more than just a string value to it. It's going to also have a hand value. So we're going to have to update this list, and it's going to be more than just a string. We're going to have to come up with a concept of a player, and the player is going to have cards of their own.
Do you have an interface somewhere for that?
We don't have that yet. So you're doing the same thing I'm doing. You just haven't written it down anywhere. So
interface.
What we're going to end up having is public class player, and the player will have a list of its cards. Public list of card that is its hand.
You're making this really complicated. I was just thinking of making player like an object with like it's got a name string and it's got a
that's the same thing.
Hand array. No, you're making a class with things and specialties and
Why is it yelling? Oh, I didn't finish the deck part. A list of card. Just the deck. You're saying the same thing I'm doing. It's just you're thinking of it in TypeScript.
Like fancier. Can't you make an object? Do you not have capabilities of object making?
This is an object. Player is an object.
No,
class is an object.
Okay, no.
This is, I can't remember TypeScript syntax off the top of my head, but this is the same. In TypeScript, I think you could just use an interface, right? You can just say interface player, and it has these things, and it just, you can instantiate interface of player without creating a concrete player.
I guess what I'm thinking of is like an object that literally just has like keys and values, and what you're creating is something that can have methods. And I'm like, whoa, that's like way farther than I thought we would go.
So we could have methods if we want to, but we don't necessarily have to on a class. But yeah, what David is saying is where I was going to go with that. You could create a, instead of a list of player as players, you could say, give me a hash set, which a hash set has a key, which would be the player's name, and then some value of t, which would be the player's hand. But wait, that assumes that those are the only two values you'll ever need to hold.
No, he was saying hash set for cards, not players, right?
Oh, instead of card?
He was saying
use a hash set.
Instead of list card, consider using hash set card for the deck and hand.
Why would I'm trying to think of what advantage that would give me.
Can you explain what a hash set is?
And yeah, card would probably be better as a record than a class. Records are new. That's the only reason I avoided records, is to not further confuse things. So records are a more simplified version of a class. They just came out in C#9. So not to alienate developers that haven't quite got on C#9 fully yet, I was trying to stay away from record, but it is a better choice than a class. For player, however, I think we're going to have some state management stuff involved. So in .NET, like in JavaScript, we can just create like an anonymous object and say like, this thing has my property and some property that has some value, right? We don't have the ability to do that in .NET. The cheapest way to do that is with a record or a class. So even though we don't intend to have a bunch of methods and all that, it's just going to be a class that holds some state values for us. It's still a class. So we're going to create a class of, what is this? If it's a record, then you get value comparison semantics that work really nicely with hash set. Very good to know. So we may end up taking the card and moving it to a record. Yeah, and my card has yeah, I think we're getting down a rabbit hole though. We're gonna lose time here if we keep debating architecture. The main thing is there's no other way to specify something to hold data in .NET other than a few basic types: class, record, those type of things. But they all look about the same. They're all just defining that we need a player is going to have a hand and a name.
So it'd be JavaScript-esque objects in this language.
There's no, I want to say no. We could say no for this discussion. There are, but they're rarely used because they're for special things, because they're very expensive to use.
Okay. So we have a list of players, and the player consists of a list of cards, which is their hand, and a name. Do they need anything else? A score or a total or a score? Or...
don't think we've got to that yet.
Okay. So right now they only need these two things in order to deal a hand, you think? We're fine with maybe?
Mm-hmm. And then I think we're going to I think
Oh,
we're
do
going
they
to
need a
break
unique
some
ID?
code. I'm sorry?
Do they need a unique ID in order to like deal out to them? Or
No, we could give them one, but we don't have that yet.
well, I just didn't know how you were planning on talking to them.
So right now we could do it by name.
Okay.
So we haven't quite figured that part of the puzzle out yet.
Okay.
So a unique identifier would probably be a really good idea. So what we could do is we could say public GUID. Is that right? GUID. It's not in the right namespace. No.
I really like your whole new GUID thing. I think that's really cool. Does that exist in JavaScript?
Yeah, it should. Or why am I not getting a GUID type? No available actions.
Using system. You don't have.
It's using system. Why is it not giving me?
Using system.
Why is it not asking me to import that?
Because it's VS Code and there are bugs.
GUID. We'll just call it ID. That's probably the best way to do that.
Okay.
So we'd give it an ID. We could even, what we could do is make that part of the constructor. This is where records come in handy, but still don't know if record is the right. I need to explore records a little bit more and see where they fit in. Why did it give me game state as my constructor? That was just terrible IntelliSense. It gave me the wrong constructor. Wow. Player is, when I construct it, it will, let's see if I get IntelliSense here. Replace with methods, generate, add a parameter, generate a constructor.
Oh. Doodly doo.
So what I would like it to do is there should be one that makes it a private read only, and then that is the GUID, that is my ID, and then my ID is created when my player is created.
So.
And then we have a read-only property that's public ID. Public GUID ID that returns that backing field. So what this would do is this makes it so the system sets a GUID when it creates the player, and it is set internally inside of the player class, and you cannot set this by the outside at all.
Yeah, I was wondering why you didn't have
new
the
GUID.
word new anywhere.
So I got to use the right method. So new will give me a null or an empty GUID. This gives me an actual instance with a GUID value. So thank you, chat. That would have
understanding of syntax, because you just wrote 5 lines, whereas I would have simply done like something around the lines of public read only player GUID is equal to GUID.newGUID, and it's like one line and it's there and it's happy. So what the fudge?
So what this does is private read only means that it's going to be set once and only once. And the reason we do that is our GUID isn't going to change. It should never change, right? Why would a player's GUID change?
I'm totally fine with that. Down with that.
So what we're going to do is internally inside of the player class, we'll set the GUID, and that happens when player's constructed. So when we say foo equals new player, then player will internally generate a new GUID.
Why don't we, in the constructor, just say private read-only GUID equals GUID dot new GUID. You've got like 3 lines here, and I don't understand why we've got all these lines.
If it was inside of player, it would be scoped to the constructor only. See all this light up in red? It has no access to the value.
Okay.
So we have to put that outside the scope of, oops, I lost it.
Okay. But you're saying on generation of this player in the constructor, first thing, create that ID, but also we're scoping the ID outside of the constructor so that we have access to it elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then to make it readable from the outside, because we want to be able to set it internally, but we don't want anybody outside of player to set the GUID, but we need to read the GUID, so we need to be able to get it. So what we do is we say this is the same as having a get only property. So if we actually look at the is it going to give it to me? There we go. Look at what it created. So this code with the little lambda actually converts itself to this. So say this is a property of ID with a get method, and it returns a GUID. So it's going to return that internal ID. But with that internal ID, I can never override it, set it, modify it. It's only giving it to me. There's no set method. So there's no set on this side of the equation like there is with the hand or the name.
Okay. Well, so a couple people in the chat, like Johan or Johan, you can skip the constructor and put the new on the field. And then Silly Queen said that you can write a property without set, which would be read-only as well, but with less code.
Yeah, there's some shorthand syntax for private set that does this as well. And I'm trying to remember. There's so many ways to do the same piece
and
of
I'm
code
totally
here.
not critiquing your way. I wanted to understand like the reasoning behind it before we moved on. So I'm totally fine with us doing it this way.
I just need to look at a reference again to see how it's written. Private set's probably easier to read.
Public GUID ID get equals GUID.new GUID.
So
that would be
that would be equivalent to it.
To read only.
And we wouldn't need, that's the best way, I think, to do that, David. So we could remove all that garbage. And then the same way we did down here. These things changed so many times. Like, you kind of get into an era where, equals good.
Why will this only happen once, though, since we're not in a constructor?
Because these are, when you create a property and set it in the same definition. So when I define this property and I set equals to, this actually happens inside the constructor. So the compiler sees this and then generates the constructor for you. So this is implied.
So would the same be for the next line with like the list where we're setting to equal to new? That's only going to run once.
Yes.
Okay.
This is even these methods that we're writing here, some would consider new syntax. Like, this is probably a few years old. You could do this. The reason I wrote it the way I did is because I wrote a majority of my code during the time frame. It's like old man sedimentary rock right here. And you're seeing that line like, Ed wrote a bunch of code when that was in style. And that was the way you did it. Now they've added these shorthand methods here that do a lot of magic for you and replace that constructor. Yeah. It's good, though, that you saw all of it, Alyssa, because you will see code like that still. And then you understand the underpinnings of what this equal sign just did. It replaced those 3 lines of code.
There's so many, like you said, there's so many ways of doing things, and being new to the language and only having a JavaScript background, it's helpful to know how each way works, because I'm grateful for you, Ed. I want you to know I'm never critiquing the way you're doing something. I'm just trying to understand the language.
Oh no, absolutely. The chat room's being amazing too, and like naming off all the different ways that this is possible. But this this equals to new thing here is basically taking place of this. It's still actually generated somewhere. There's probably somebody smarter than me that knows where to look to actually see the compiled IL code that comes out of this. And they could show you, like, it actually generates a constructor, and in that constructor, it creates a field, assigns the GUID, and then sets up a read-only property with that name. And it does it all without you like realizing it's happening. So there's a bit of language magic that's going on inside of this stuff. So it's all the questions are all well intended. They're all landing in the right place.
Oh my gosh, we have like 7 minutes, 6 minutes.
Okay, well, that's fine.
I'm so sorry, I took up so much of your time today with questions.
Perfectly fine. We need to give out some prizes, I think.
Oh, we do need to do prizes. Anything else that you want to add to game state before we do that? We are.
I just want to mention before we get lost here that when we updated our game state and removed the string from the list of players and made an actual player type, that we broke a lot of code here. Because when we add a player now, we're not just taking the name or the string and adding that to a list. We need to create a player here. So we need to do something like new player, and then we need to say name equals player, like that. So you might see a little bit of magic here as well.
And player is the string?
Yeah. So we're going to accept the player string from the client, and then we're going to create a new player with the name that has that string, and add that to our list. Now, this syntax here, you see, like where I use the braces, why didn't I say like player.name equals? If I don't have I could put it in a constructor. I could have a constructor that is player player name string name, and set the parameter inside the constructor. Or I can just let the magic happen and not worry about creating a constructor like that, and use these curly brackets and say that I want the property name, and I'm going to go ahead and set that to player.
So if you did put it on the constructor, you would not have to do this part with the curly brackets?
Right. It would be like this. It'd be player name.
Ooh, I understand. Okay, I'm with you.
It's the same as saying it like that. But this IntelliSense is just murdering this. But the compiler is smart, and it lets us do curly braces now. And we can bypass needing to have constructors for all sorts of things. So we can new up a player. We can assign the name of the player and then let it go into our array. And then let's just make sure our code compiles before we leave it this way. I think it does. I don't see any red marks over here. Oh, Bill. Duh. And we're good. Go ahead and let's do the prizes.
I was trying to see if there is anybody good to raid after this. But yes, let's do some prizes.
And yeah, let's get the prizes. Do we already have them selected?
We do. We do.
Oh, okay.
All right. So our winners for today, Rollers with 2 S's, Flash Jab, and Ancient Coder. And we will fulfill prizes on Friday. We're going to order all of the Amazon gift cards at once. But congratulations again to Rollers, Flash Jab, and Ancient Coder.
Oh, awesome. Ancient Coder is in a lot of my streams, so I am happy to see you get a prize, my friend. So we'll leave this here. We'll push this up to GitHub. Just with the GitHub project in mind, remember that most of the stuff that's here doesn't do anything yet, because tomorrow we're going to pick up from here, and we're going to make the game state actually do stuff with the players, give them a deck.
One more final guest, right?
And we do. We have Brady Gaster coming on the show. So he is pretty much like there's David Fowler and then there's Brady Gaster for go-to people for SignalR. And he is going to join us tomorrow. He works at Microsoft with the team that does all of this stuff. I'm trying to remember what he called all the folks that are kind of in that crowd of SignalR at Microsoft. What did he call them? He used it. I don't know if it's something that they use all the time, but he called them like the real-time.
Oh yeah, real-time
bunch, real-time army, something like that. Yeah, so he is real-time army. I'm a member. Yes, he said that as well. So it will be great to have him on. I'm not sure exactly what he's talking about, or if he's just gonna kind of dig into all the questions that we may have, or what we're doing. But I'm sure it will be interesting. He knows all the SignalR things.
Hopefully, get a semblance of playing Crazy Eights game. Finished out tomorrow, and more prizes as well. So make sure you tune in for our last SignalR Stream Week stream tomorrow morning. So yeah, thank you everyone. I just want to say I see all of your comments in the chat. I appreciate all of you, and I really do appreciate you, Ed, for putting this together and being so patient with me as well. So.
No, it's been a lot of fun to teach you all the .NETs and SignalR things all at one time. Like I said, this is deep into the pool for you for sure.
Well, very cool. Well, we are off for the day. We're going to go have some lunch, but have a marvelous evening, afternoon, morning, whatever time it is for you. So,
all right, thanks everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.